The top business stories live from the Sky newsroom. Breaking news in the last hour. Piers Morgan has split from Rupert Murdoch as he is going to step away from News UK. Why Britain's soaring borrowing costs are a big problem for the Chancellor. And Rolls-Royce expands its West Sussex factory to meet demand for its bespoke cars. I'll be speaking to its chief executive. Very good morning on this Wednesday, Business Live with me, Darren McCaffrey. And we're going to start with that breaking news about Piers Morgan in the last hour or so. Let's bring in our city editor, Mark Kleiman, who broke the story and joins me now. Mark, very good morning to you. This is quite a significant story because it tells us a lot about the changing face of our media environment, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it does, Darren. What we've learned this morning is that Piers Morgan, who has been long associated with Rupert Murdoch's British news operations, is leaving News UK, or has now left News UK at the end of his latest 3-year contract, where he wrote regular columns for The Sun and the New York Post. He also presented a show on the now folded Talk TV channel. He instead is going to focus on his Piers Morgan Uncensored YouTube channel, and as part of the deal he's agreed with News UK, he will take full ownership of that YouTube channel and its 3.6 million strong subscriber base. He will still have a commercial relationship with Rupert Murdoch's company, and that will be in the form of a 4-year revenue sharing partnership that will split the advertising revenue that's generated by the YouTube venture. Now, Mr. Morgan wants to expand Piers Morgan Uncensored, particularly in the US at first, but then further afield internationally afterwards. And in answer to your question, I think it does illustrate some of the shifting sands in the global media sector. Piers Morgan is said to believe that YouTube will be, in some respects, the dominant broadcast audience platform within a couple of years. He told me when I called him this morning that owning the Piers Morgan Uncensored brand would allow my team and I the freedom to focus exclusively on building Uncensored into a standalone business editorially and commercially, and in time widening it from just me and my content. Now, what that diversification in future looks like remains to be seen, but I think it does illustrate the fact that prominent media figures like Mr. Morgan now believe they can shape their own destiny as independent media ventures rather than as part of necessarily mainstream media organisations.
OK, Mark, thank you very much for that. Breaking that news this morning. You can read more on that, of course, on the Sky News website. Now, let's move on to the big task facing the Chancellor today, and that is how to reduce the UK's soaring borrowing costs. Yesterday, they hit the highest level since 1998. Let's speak to Ed Conway, our economics and data editor, who's been drilling into the numbers. Ed.
Yeah, it's a landmark moment, really, for the UK borrowing costs. We've seen them, 30-year borrowing costs, get to the highest level since all the way back in 1998. They've come down a little bit since then, but in the past 24 hours, they've hit that point. And obviously, that means the cost of borrowing for the government and indeed across the UK is going higher. And you're seeing a similar thing in different maturities, so 10-year borrowing and 5-year borrowing and so on. It raises a question, really, is this something the UK is facing alone? Actually, what's kind of interesting is when you look at other countries, so I've just put on 2 lines here showing you the same chart, basically 30-year borrowing rates for the US and for Germany. Well, just look, most of these lines are rising as well. Not as much in Germany, but certainly for the US as well. Underlining, people are concerned. They're concerned about growth. They're concerned about the amount of debt that countries are taking on, the UK and, of course, the US under President Trump as well. So those costs are going higher. But some people have asked another question. They've asked, given that in the UK, look at that line there, that's when where those borrowing costs got to after the mini-budget. Given that we're now higher than that point, does that mean that where we are right now is actually worse than in 2022? It's a big question, but actually we have a few ways we can test this. And one of the ways that we can test this is by looking at what happens with the pound. So if you have those rates that I showed you a moment ago going through the roof, but also the pound plummeting, that's a sign that people might be taking money out of the economy. And that's certainly the lesson from 2022. So back in 2022, this line is just showing you a kind of trade-weighted level of how strong the pound is. So the higher the line is, the stronger the pound is versus all sorts of other currencies. And you can see it hit the lowest level in recent history, in modern history, back in 2022. But it has come back since. So around the period since Keir Starmer has been in office, I wouldn't say it's been super strong, but it's certainly been relatively stable and it hasn't got down to those levels. So test one, definitely, it doesn't look the same as in 2022. The other test is to ask, is the UK an outlier? And you saw that chart I showed you a moment ago about the fact that the US is kind of going up at the moment as well. Well, this is showing you, post all of the budgets in recent history, where the UK, those UK government bond rates, this is the 10-year rather than the 30-year, but similar kind of story, where they've traded versus Germany and the US. And you can think of this blue area as a kind of safe zone. If you're within that zone, you're within the kind of historical average. And if you look at what happened after the budget, Rachel Reeves' first budget, there was definitely a moment just in the first few days after that budget where that line slightly went above the blue area. And you'll probably recall, we were reporting people are concerned in markets because this line is getting a bit too high. We are kind of shifting away from where everyone else is. However, here's the thing. Now compare that, and note that this kind of went down into the safe zone afterwards. Still a bit higher, so still the UK is being charged more for its debt, but nonetheless in that safe zone. Now compare that line with what happened after the mini-budget. So that red line is showing you where the UK was versus Germany versus the US after the mini-budget in the first few days. And you can see we were way, way beyond other countries around the world. And what brought that down? Well, it came down the moment that Kwasi Kwarteng resigned. So that's a totally different story. And obviously there's lots going on. Bank of England was also starting quantitative easing, but a lot going on. And by the way, the reason that line ends there rather than kind of going on as the Rachel Reeves one does, well, that's when Liz Truss resigned. OK, so that story is a very different story. Now, having shown you two reasons why this isn't quite the same as in 2022, it's worth saying it is still a concern. It's a concern for one reason as well for Rachel Reeves, which is that she has a certain amount of headroom against her fiscal rules. She's got these fiscal rules that she needs to keep. And that headroom has been reduced by the amount of borrowing she did in the budget. So it was, before all of those measures in the budget to spend more money, particularly on investment, it was just under £23 billion. Then she did her measures, and that brought down the amount of headroom. And basically what we're showing you is that the higher that bar is, the more headroom you've got. If you go into red territory, then you're breaking the fiscal rules. At the budget, it was £9.9 billion. But because of these changes, because of these higher interest rates, that means you've got more debt costs. And as a result of that, look at what happens. That goes down, according to estimates from Capital Economics, that goes down to about £1 billion worth of headroom. So you can see it going down and down and down, potentially getting close to that point where the rule is broken, meaning even though these changes in debt yields aren't quite as bad as we saw in 2022, when you look at the whole picture, there's certainly some concern for Rachel Reeves.
OK, Ed, I appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. Great analysis on the challenges facing Rachel Reeves as we go into 2025. Now, let's move on to cars, motor manufacturing, and Rolls-Royce in particular, because it's unveiling a record £300 million investment at its West Sussex factory today. It'll help expand production of its bespoke and electric models. Customers with quite a lot of money to spend, it's fair to say, can add an 18-carat gold sculpture, fancy embroideries or wood veneers, and even holographic paint finishes to the new cars. Well, let's speak to Chris Brownridge, who's the Chief Executive of Rolls-Royce. Very good morning to you. Chris, just talk us through some of these quite extraordinary bespoke measures that customers can now ask for.
Well, Darren, good morning to you, and thank you for inviting me on your show. At Rolls-Royce, we don't even see ourselves as a car manufacturer. We make handmade, bespoke luxury goods for our clients and deliver an extraordinary experience. And our bespoke business is at the heart of that success. And in answer to your question, what is bespoke? Well, it could be something as simple as a hand-painted coach line on the exterior paintwork of your Rolls-Royce with your family monogram, to something as sophisticated as a motor car, which actually you work with us over a 4-year period to design your individual Rolls-Royce and create a coach-built Rolls-Royce. We have team of creative and skilled artists and craftspeople at Goodwood who produce masterpieces, and the breadth of what they can achieve is simply breathtaking.
It is indeed. I don't think anyone could doubt that. But it is, let's be frank about this, way out of the price range, isn't it, for most people? I mean, you guys are a niche manufacturer, aren't you? I think you sold some 5,712 vehicles last year.
That's right. So at Rolls-Royce, we don't really measure our success in how many we make. Our success is really defined by what we're making and what is within those motor cars. And that's our whole business strategy. We are a luxury brand. Our clients engage with us to create a remarkable masterpiece for themselves and also for the experience that they have in working with Rolls-Royce and the team of experts and artists and creatives at Goodwood, the home of Rolls-Royce.
And Chris, just talk us through, what does this mean, this investment, for the motor industry in the UK, which has been under quite a lot of pressure in recent months? I mean, we talk about more jobs. Where is this money going to?
So this is a very important step for Rolls-Royce, because what it is the biggest investment that we've made at the home of Rolls-Royce since the start there in 2003. And the reason we're making this investment is because the demand for more complicated client commissions from every corner of the world is growing. And the reason that's growing is because we have opened private offices, which is effectively taking Goodwood into these regions where our creatives and our designers can work directly with our clients to create these aspirational designs. And the plant extension is giving us the space that we need in order to bring them to life, because at the moment in our facility, we need more space for these more complicated projects and also for the coach build motor cars that we produce. And so with this investment, it really enables us and unlocks our potential for the future. It is not about creating more Rolls-Royces. It's about creating more sophisticated and rewarding Rolls-Royces for our clients.
Why do you think, Chris, your model has proved more sustainable than the other great British brands in motor manufacturing, that of Jaguar, which clearly felt it has had to change direction quite substantially? What do you think, what are you doing right that you think maybe they've done wrong?
Well, at Rolls-Royce, we see ourselves as a business which focuses on delivering a luxury product. And the luxury product is the experience and also the motor car itself. Scarcity is critical to our success. We typically would produce somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 motor cars per year, so a very small volume. But each of those particular motor cars is intricately designed for a specific client. And we benchmark what we do against other luxury brands. It's not necessarily car brands, it's other brands that deliver luxury experiences to their clients and use craft and artistry to create remarkable pieces. OK,
Chris, just a couple of other questions.
Sure.
One of them is on Russia, if I can. You know, there are sanctions in place. You have stopped selling cars to Russia in 2022, but we know, and Ed Conway, who's just been on, has been looking into this quite a lot in recent times, that Rolls-Royces are still on sale in Moscow and St. Petersburg and elsewhere. What can you do? Are you doing anything to try and prevent what seems like the illegal passing on of your cars into sanctioned Russia?
Yes, of course, and we're very active in this area. It's very clear to us that we will not sell motor cars into Russia, and our dealer partners who are responsible for our distribution are absolutely crystal clear about that. In fact, every client order that we have for a Rolls-Royce, we look at, well, who is buying that motor car? And of course, there have been resellers who've tried to buy motor cars and may export them to different locations. At Rolls-Royce, we have a very clear list, a blacklist of resellers that our dealers cannot sell cars to, and any dealer that were to contravene that, there would be steps that we would take against them. That said, of course, we can't control everything that happens, and if there's an individual that is working in a way that is misleading our dealers, they will do everything they can, but we need to make sure that we're being rigorous in every respect there, and we are.
OK, and just finally, Chris, we know it's a big British brand, but it's a proper international seller, isn't it, Rolls-Royce? But
yes.
Let's look at the domestic market here. Just finally, what is your sense about the British economy as we go into 2025? I mean, it's not looking great, frankly, when you look at lots of the facts and figures. What's your sense of how well Britain's economy is performing?
Well, I can work on the information I have about the business in the UK. And in 2024, we had another strong year for Rolls-Royce. And in fact, the Spectre, which is our super luxury coupe, which uses a very sophisticated electric drivetrain, was the most demanded model in the UK. So another successful year for us. But Rolls-Royce as a business is hedged globally. We have clients in every corner of the world, and that's one of the things that really gives us power, our agility, plus the fact that we're hedged in every part of the world. So we're very confident about 2025 and beyond, and that's why we're making these investments in the UK at the heart of Rolls-Royce.
OK, Chris Brownridge there from Rolls-Royce. Thank you very much indeed. Well, now, it's that time of the year where many of us start to think about warmer climes and the search for some summer sun. The travel agency Skyscanner says that demand in the last week has been sky high. Let's speak to Martin Nolan, global travel expert at Skyscanner. Very good morning to you. So it's looking like a bumper start.
It absolutely is. Last year was a real record year for travel, but we're already seeing things get off to a fantastic start this year already. We're seeing a 12% increase in terms of flights, 23% increase in hotel searches, and actually with only a few days into the year already, following the sort of Sunshine Saturday, we saw our global app revenue increase 47% year on year. Hotel revenue increase 162% year on year. So it really is shaping up to be, we think, a really strong year again for travel.
And where are people looking to go to?
There's a lot of old favourite destinations in there. Some places are always going to be popular, I think. But emerging destinations are also key to this as well. You're seeing real growth in terms of, new emerging countries, but also for tourism. And also the growth of sort of second, third cities, etc. Places that are more off the beaten path of your kind of typical travel. One of the places we're seeing the highest increase in is Reggio Calabria in Italy. We're seeing that up 540%. Tartu in Estonia, that's also climbing really high. That's nearly 300% increase there. And thinking of those kind of less well-travelled to for tourism anyway, destinations nearer to home like Cordoba in Spain, that's up 133%. But people are looking all over the place at the minute. There's great deals to be had, kind of near and far. So if you're thinking short haul, there's some fantastic stuff out there. And also some great deals on long haul.
That was going to be my point, Martin. Are there great deals to be had? I mean, how are airfares comparing to previous years? Are people going to have to fork out more money to go on a holiday this year?
I think there quite often is that sense that things are becoming more expensive. But what we see at Skyscanner, and obviously the primary purpose for us is to help people compare and find the best deals out there. Ultimately, this comes down to supply and demand, and there are still really good deals out there. We've produced a list of 10 destinations that are some of them less well known, some of them really well known, that you can fly to from the UK for less than £100 return for flights for one adult. There's still really good deals out there. Ultimately, travel companies they need to fill the seats on the planes, they need to fill their hotel rooms. So there are still really good deals out there.
Martin, I suppose my final and quick question is, where does the man from Skyscanner go on his holiday?
I live in Edinburgh, so the weather's generally quite poor, so I try and favour warmer destinations. But this year, in fact, my next trip is to Vancouver and then off skiing after.
Very nice indeed. Very nice. Martin, thank you very much indeed. Martin Nolan there from Skyscanner. God, on days like this, it does make you quite envious to get away, doesn't it? Right, we're going to take a quick break here on Business Live. Coming up next, the markets, FTSE down a little, all the details in just a couple of minutes.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We'd been warned that we would meet people in the lowest moment of their lives.
Their story is one of fundamental American failure. Well, a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club, but I have to say there are more media here than there are supporters.
We love Trump!
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too. This is just the audience that Joe Biden wanted.
Is this the moment to reform gun laws?
You know, it's easy to go to politics.
But it's important. It's at the heart of the issue.
For all the talk of a toned-down, humbled Trump, yes, maybe there was just a little less rhetoric, a little less divisiveness, but in the end it was the same rhythm, the same speech, the same man.
All them people that died in Russia and Ukraine, they'd still be alive today if Donald Trump was president.
If it was my wish, have a businessman that's strong like Trump, but maybe just doesn't say as much, you know?
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What we've been allowed to see over here is a humanitarian corridor. Free wherever you get your news.
A young American medical student is making remarkable things happen.
I've seen a lot of difficult things, and honestly, it breaks my heart. These children don't deserve that.
I don't think there's a single Arab I know who isn't seriously disturbed by what's going on.
And so they gathered for this wonder of nature.
I'm very excited right now.
This is an extraordinary moment beyond anything I could have expected. Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, it would appear, is about to learn his fate. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. Sky News, get the full story first. Do you fear a fourth indictment?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
I just took a shower above the couch. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Welcome back to Business Live. Let's have a look at what the markets are doing this morning. Let's speak to Emma Wall, Head of Platform Investments at Hargreaves Lansdown. Very good morning to you, Emma. Let's talk about UK funds having the worst year, apparently, in quite a long time, and again, a sign of London's diminished status.
Yeah, it's definitely not better the devil you know for investors in the UK. It's really interesting because not that long ago, say 5-10 years ago, one of the conversations we'd be constantly having with clients is don't have a domestic bias. Make sure that you diversify by buying investments based all over the world. And now we've got the opposite problem. We have 10 billion pulled from UK funds in 2024, according to Calistone data, and 12 billion the year before. And this is a trajectory that we've seen over the last few years. And it's something that we see with our client base as well. So routinely, the top 10 most bought investments on our platform are not UK funds, with the exception occasionally of an income fund, because the UK does remain a real haven for dividends. But the preference is very much for US investments, technological investments and global investments, which is unsurprising, seeing that the performance actually over the last 3 to 5 years has very much been focused in those areas. And indeed, we saw that very much last year with the S&P 500 managing considerably better than the FTSE 100.
Yeah, and this adds just, doesn't it, Emma, to the malaise we're seeing around the British economy. We're talking about borrowing costs a little bit earlier on. I look at sterling again this morning, down quite significantly against the dollar. It just gives a sense that all the indicators are pointing in the wrong direction, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're quite right. It's part of a much larger story. Now, some of this is down to performance. Investors will always chase performance. And when you've had the S&P 500 do so considerably well, particularly towards the end of the year with that Trump bump, it's not really surprising that you see flows following that performance in momentum. But it is part of a much wider story around making the UK a more attractive place to list, a more attractive place to do business. Part of the idea about brain drain, where we're losing some of our top execs to US businesses choosing to list it elsewhere. So it's something that the previous previous government looked to tackle with the British ISA, off the table for this government, but it'd be really interesting to see how the Labour government approach the concept of encouraging investment into British industry to boost the UK economy.
And just finally on that, I mean, are you optimistic about this year? Or do you think actually this is going to be quite tough and the government are going to have to make some difficult decisions?
The UK is not one of our favoured markets in terms of where we expect to see most outperformance for listed businesses over 2025. Now, that's not to say that it won't do well. And on a long-term basis, actually, valuations look incredibly compelling in the UK. But we do think it's very much about stock selection. On the whole, there'll be markets that fare better in 2025 than the UK. We have to say, actually, one of the areas we're most bullish on is US smaller companies, because we think they're actually things like lowering corporate taxes, lowering personal taxes, and even the tariffs, which may hurt larger US companies, because obviously they do trade with different parts of the world. Smaller US companies will be more shielded from those. So actually one of our top picks in terms of equity markets is the US again this year.
Emma, as always, great analysis there. Emma Wool there from Hargreaves Lansdown. Thank you very much indeed. OK, that is it from me on Business Live for this morning. We're back, of course, this afternoon at 4:30. Up next, though, it is Prime Minister's Question Time with Jane Secker and Sam Coates. The first one of 2025, grooming gangs, almost certainly due to come up. Stay tuned for that at the top of the hour, midday, here on Sky News.